Cry It Out Loud, a podcast by Chasing the Rainbows with your host, Bernice Quisenberry.
Today's podcast episode is called Protecting Your Peace, and we have Liz O'Donnell on our podcast again today. If you didn't get a chance to listen to our previous segment together, please check it out. It is season 2, episode 15, especially to hear a story. But today we'll be talking all about, protecting our peace and our story and our baby. So welcome, Liz. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me back. I'm so happy to be here again.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we started to dive into it, in the last episode, about how we are out in the public constantly sharing our stories about our babies and everything. And, and some days we just don't want to talk about it. And, we're more introverted and we need to do things to, help us to be able to help others. And so I think diving into this a little bit more is important because, this is what we have left of our babies is our story with them.
I could not agree more. And I think protecting your peace is something that a lot of us, when this first happens, we're almost scared to do because we feel like we owe things to other people. And that is, it makes sense to feel that way. But I hope that our conversation today can show people that, we can kind of guide that in a different direction and you shouldn't have to feel that way.
Right. And I felt like too, right when we went through, losing Brooke and everything and returning to work and returning to society, seeing like acquaintances and things like that, a lot of people knew that, we were pregnant, we delivered early, Brooke was alive, and then, her passing. And I felt like, I don't know if I was almost like trauma dumping too, because, I was still like in the healing process because it's expected of you to return so quickly. And getting back out there, it was like really difficult. I didn't know who was like trying to gossip and be in the know of how we were doing and what was going on and who was there to support us.
And the fact that we even have to think about that and consider that is so sad. And I hope that to a certain degree that we overreact with that almost, but you never know. Like our feelings of self-blame during those times are so incredibly high.
Yeah.
It makes sense to think that people, might just be trying to get info or gossip a little bit. But, I hope that people see these traumatic events and tragedies for what they are. And I hope that people would not do that. But yeah.
And you're right. It could be that because, when we go through traumas and stuff, it's hard for us to know who to trust. And maybe it's more of a self thing. And maybe it was me, thinking, are they just doing this to, be like, especially in a work environment like I was in outside sales, all of that. So it was a very competitive industry. So, you look at that and you're like, who was really there for me and who was, just, you just don't know.
Yeah. And a lot of that I feel like comes from people not understanding how to react.
Yeah.
It's just so easy to read into things. And then you're definitely not protecting your peace when you're feeling like that. So
I know, agreed.
It's a lot. And really we should only be focusing on our grief for our baby and focusing on how to reacclimate to ourselves to society and having all of those other worries around. It's so natural.
It is.
We have to try to silence them in order to do what we're doing right now,
Right. Exactly. And now you and I share our stories so openly and honestly because we want to help others and we want them to not feel that alone in isolation, as we felt at different points, in our lives along this journey. And, making sure that we are taking care of ourselves because, like having to talk to family members, friends, especially when you're returning to outings and seeing them, right? It's so tough to figure out what you even need, especially in those early days.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm trying to think back to it. And I also feel like, reflecting on those early days, I mean, I don't even remember half of the stuff that I did or how I reacted to people.
Right.
We're just in such a fog. Like
Yes, you
thinking back
are.
right now, and I'm like, why can't I think back? And
Yeah.
yeah.
It's like you're in a tornado, like a whirlwind, because like of everything going on in your mind. And and then also like for me, I don't know, Liz, you can touch on this, but like in my mind too, like I almost felt like my mind was protecting myself. And so in different ways, like I wasn't able to remember different things. And I felt like, was that because it was just focused on like healing and all of that, and like putting one foot in front of the other, survival mode realistically.
But yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is, and I mean, it's literally the science of our brain trying to protect ourselves
Yes.
from those traumatic incidents where you don't, fully remember them.
Yeah.
Um, that's a way that our brain is trying to
Yeah.
help us. So, no, I totally,
Yeah.
totally understand that.
Well, in the early days too, I mean, showering and doing just basic self-care things, making sure I was like drinking enough water and like at least trying to get some nutrients in a day. Like it was tough enough just to do the basic necessities of self-care, let alone, finding anything else at that point.
Yeah, and I felt that same way too, which is, obviously what laid the foundation for Aaliyah in Action a few
Yeah.
months after. But taking care of yourself, I feel like is a way to honor your child,
Yes.
because you still have to keep going.
Right.
And, I always say with Aaliyah in Action, this is for the person that needs to make it to tomorrow. That self-care piece is going to help you make it to tomorrow. And instead of feeling guilty about it, I want to kind of change that narrative and not feel guilty about having to take care of yourself after this, but rather do it in honor of your
Exactly.
um because you have got to keep going. And if we
Yeah.
can reframe it in a way that we can be doing it for our babies, um then that is very important, I think.
And it's so true. And, we share that so much, Liz, because, like we tell survivors all the time, taking that hour out of your day to jump in like one of our support groups or just be with other lost parents and like talking through things, and processing out loud is just like sometimes like just doing that because that seems like a lot and it's very emotional and it can be but it also does like leaving it's like you just like I always feel a sense of relief getting
Yep.
like a safe space to share, but it's really like, trying to find what works for you and
Yeah.
like what makes the most sense, especially when you're just starting out your navigation of this and, the lifelong journey of it.
And I'll add to that, that
Yeah.
you might not figure out what works best for you for a little while. I know I didn't. I know it
Oh,
took me a little while to figure out, and I tried a whole bunch of different things.
right. Right.
'Cause I knew I had to do something to help myself, but again, I had never experienced something like this, so I didn't really know what
Yeah.
that would look like for me. So, I think it's important to also know, if you try something out and it works once or twice, and then all of a sudden it's kind of feeling flat for you, it's okay to look into something
Yeah.
else. Because I think we said the other day, like, this is not linear.
No.
We're gonna be bouncing all over the place for honestly, probably forever in different ways. It just evolves.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, realizing too that, what works for you might change. It might change frequently. It might change infrequently. You might love something, not love it so much, and then end up going back to it.
Yeah.
And all of those phases are just grief, and it's
Yeah.
normal. And it's
Yeah.
not something that you should get mad at yourself about. If you're like, why can't I find something that works? It's
I know.
okay.
I know.
Yeah.
I so badly during this because, of course, researching everything, how to help yourself kind
Yeah.
of like situations, after losing Brooke. Because, like you said, like this loss is so different than anything we've ever been through. And
Yeah.
the yeah, traumatic events around it, everything. So, and I so badly wanted to sit and meditate. And for me, like my
Mm.
squirrels were going way too fast during that time. I couldn't get my mind to just be. And so that's when like I was using running almost as my form of meditation then. And it looked a lot different than others. And,
Yeah.
of course, I was beating myself up because I wasn't doing very well at meditating. Because, at that time, I was like, I just don't want to feel like a failure at anything else because I felt like,
Yeah.
so much, like my body failed us and, different things like that. And I think it is taking away those expectations that like I'm going to do this and this is going to work and I'm going to be healed. It's just not like that. And like you said, not linear. It doesn't have a schedule, routine, or timeline. And it's
Right.
like you don't know when it's going to pop up. So, like one day journaling might work, and the next it might be going for an outside walk or, during
Yeah.
those overwhelming grief and trauma response moments. And I
Yeah.
think it is finding that for yourself. Absolutely.
And some days, I mean, I know this is true for me. Some days it's I'm not leaving my bed. And
Yeah.
I try to not get down on that or thinking, "Oh my gosh, you're not being productive," or "You're not." I really try to just let those "I'm not leaving my bed today" days happen, because they
Yes.
recharge us too.
Yes.
So for some people, it could be that you do nothing for a whole
Right.
day. But
Right.
that is still something that's
Yes.
still protecting you, and giving you what you need in that moment. And it's okay if
Yeah.
that looks like watching, I don't know, Real Housewives for
Yeah.
20 hours straight. That's what it looks like for me sometimes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but the journaling, and it's funny you say that because for me, I like leapt into meditation. Meditation was something that I always
Wow.
tried just throughout my life, never really got into it. I also had always really liked yoga, but never like fully took the plunge into
Yeah.
either of those, mindfulness wellness things. And after Aaliyah, that for me, meditation was I cannot run. Running is never going to be my thing. For me, meditation. So it's so funny that we're opposite with that because
Yeah.
I just dove right in, and I'm a Peloton person, so
Oh, love that. Yeah.
such amazing guided meditations, and I really have just focused with just one of the instructors. I've even reached out to her a few times, and so between that and the yoga, that has kind of been my thing, where it was not
Yeah.
before, but I noticed that, there are some times when I go a week or 2 not doing that, but I always find myself coming back to those practices.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that those have just kind of been I don't know how to say it, like my grief foundation.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
for you, it's running.
Your go-tos. Yeah.
They're the
Absolutely. Right.
go-tos, and you might not go to them for a week or 2 at a time, and that's
Right.
okay. Like for me, I
Right.
always find myself going back to that. So,
Right. And I think it's just like finding that healthy balance in yourself and having that grace.
yeah,
I think it's easier for us to give others grace. And then when it comes to ourselves, sometimes, we
always.
can be our worst critics. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And
Always. I'm so
I
guilty of
know.
that. It's insane.
I know, and I openly admit it, I talk
Yeah.
about sometimes I feel like a hypocrite because here I am telling others, of course, take the time that you need. And then when it comes to myself, the day that I'm in bed and, binge eating Cheetos and drinking Diet Mountain Dew, I'm like, here I am, being, but it's all about what you need in those moments. And in that moment too, I forget sometimes that that felt so right and comforting, and that's what I needed. And it's okay.
Yeah.
So
And I fear that sometimes people that want the best for us, I'm just thinking some people
yeah.
might feel like they can't do something like that because someone has said to them before, "You have to get up and you have to go out and do things."
Yes.
Like, "Oh, you can't just be in bed all day. You should go for a walk, or
Yeah.
you should go out and run and get some fresh air." And I feel like we all have those well-meaning people in our life, right?
Right. Tough
But
lovers. Yep.
this is where like we need to give ourselves grace and realize and put up a boundary almost and say like, no, this is what works for me.
Right.
Um, because I feel like sometimes then we're thinking, oh my gosh, so and so is right. I should be outside
And then that
breathing the
guilt.
fresh air and going for a
Yeah.
walk instead of this. But
Yeah.
no, that might not be what works best for you on
Yeah.
that day. And so
Exactly.
sometimes it's okay to kind of not share your business with everybody like that. You know what I mean? Like sometimes
Right.
it's okay to just take those days to yourself and not say a word about it because it's not worth hearing other people tell you what maybe you should have done instead.
I
Unless
know.
they've
Right.
experienced this, which, maybe some of them have. I'm going to venture to say a majority have not. The people that are giving you life advice in those early days, just listen to yourself and
Yes.
what you need. People mean well for the most part. We know that.
Yeah.
This is such a delicate and personal situation. You have to just listen to yourself and don't force yourself to do anything other than what you want to do, especially in those first couple of weeks after. Oh my gosh.
No, I know. And that's why like having that safe space to share because like I was getting sick of it too, right? Those tough lovers, man, they come at you and they're like, you need to get out of bed, you need to shower, you need to do this. I'm like, I can't even find the energy. Like I can't peel myself out of bed right now. And like I get I need to shower, but like that's a goal, right? Like I had to work towards like small goals sometimes. And sometimes it took all the energy I had just to do one thing that day. And I had to realize that's okay.
Yeah.
And just being in that situation and in those moments.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right
Well, in
list.
our Aaliyah in Action packages, we have like a self-care choice board. And the whole
Yes.
idea is because, yes, in those first few weeks, if you just accomplish one thing a day,
Yeah.
you've done something. And on
Yes.
that choice board says, take a shower, drink water, because these are little things that you just don't feel worthy of doing.
Yes.
You will feel like you can, but you have to, and eventually, and when you do take that shower, like, that is huge.
It
That is
is. Absolutely.
when you
100%.
actually do eat an entire meal and not just 2 bites and then push it away, that's huge,
It
and
is.
you should be acknowledged, and in all honesty, in those few days and weeks, celebrated for doing that. Um,
Exactly.
so yeah, I
Exactly.
hear that 100%. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. And too, like, so many people had opinions about, like, what do we do with Brooke's stuff, like, after she passed and everything in her bedroom, and for me, I know this is an unpopular opinion from especially people who have not been through this. I had to close her bedroom door, and I couldn't go in that for 6 months,
Yeah.
and every time I did, even though we didn't bring her home from the hospital or anything like that, it was where she was supposed to go. That was supposed to be her
Yeah.
room for at least 18 years, and we painted it specifically for her, had it ready with her baby theme, all of that, and had all of her baby shower items in there. And I just couldn't even bring myself. And even every time I walked by it, it was like that gut wrenching feeling all over again of losing her.
Yeah, I can connect with that 1,000%. We had
Yeah.
just had Aaliyah's baby shower a couple weeks before, so I had, like, piles of, clothes that I had washed and everything, in her room. The room was all set up, Winnie the Pooh themed, we had everything going on,
Oh
and
my
diapers
gosh, I love that.
in the shower, and,
Yeah.
immediately it took me a while to go in, and of course, friends and family asked if they could help with anything, and I said, "I just wanna leave it the way it is for right now." Um, but for what helped me was, all of the diapers and all of the, like, what felt like 20,000, solid color onesies. I just wanted to give them to people that really needed it. And, in Washington, D.C., we do have, quite a few high need communities. And so I just coordinated with people, and those things that weren't, personal and, just diapers, it was important to me to kind of, and this is where everybody is different. I wanted those out immediately. I wanted them out of my house immediately. And I was able to find teenage moms that needed those things immediately. So it worked out really well. And then everything else in Aaliyah's room, I just left it as it was. And actually, it is mostly still like that, with the exception of we took the crib out and put it in storage. But everything else is still kind of exactly what it was.
Mm,
And now for me, it's just such a peaceful place. Like, I meditate and do yoga in there. But
yeah,
yeah, it's hard to
I know.
open that door because I feel like you just see everything that should have been, and that is just
Absolutely.
maddening.
I know, and now it's empty,
Yep.
and it is true, and I know you and I talked pre-show, in between, using the bedroom for another one of our children,
Yeah.
I needed to create that zen,
Yeah.
holistic kind of feeling place, wellness space for, like for me, breath work too was really big, like
Mm,
learning like the dragon breath, fire breath, like ocean breath, different kinds of breaths, like especially in those like crippling anxiety moments after loss and
mm,
all of that. And so like that's where I would like spend time. And then I started to almost build like a healthy relationship in there with some of Brooke's things and
yeah.
looking at it as, okay, like now you're going to be sharing this with your sibling kind of thing, like in a spiritual way
Yes.
and changing my mindset a little bit like that. And then it also gave me a space to connect and almost talk with her because
Mm,
I feel like I do. I talk with her and I almost look at her as like a higher power, if you that's what you want to say, where like
yeah,
I pray to
same.
her and yes, and have that connection, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard because it takes a lot to build
Ooh,
up to that, and we are, for me, I'm 3 years out,
yeah,
and, it takes a while to get to that point, but
it
I
does.
am very much the same way,
Right.
where, yeah, that's, like, where I do most of my talking to her and, like,
Yeah.
honestly, sometimes cracking jokes, sharing frustrations about her father or this or that in a
Yeah.
funny way, you know? But it definitely takes time, and but for me now, it is such a peaceful and zen place.
Yeah.
Um, but all of that takes time, but I think hearing, like, what we're talking about right now is important to know that, if you want to, you can get to that point.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
that hope and right. And
yeah,
that if that's where, the direction you want to head. And, I think too, then when we finally got to the place of, okay, what do we do with some of Brooke's items? I
mhm,
needed to protect them. Like because, all we have is their story, their items, pictures, like that's like their memories.
yeah,
And so for me, I put everything into a keepsake box and
yep,
store it into a closet, not because I'm trying to put her in the closet, but because I
right,
don't want to see anything happen to those items.
yeah,
And it needs to be too, when we get them out for special occasions or moments that like,
yeah,
us and our oldest son, like he, wanting to remember his sister and doing all those things together. But
yeah,
yet, like, because I don't want to see anything like with the blankets that she wore, outfits she wore, anything happened to him, I think, that would break my heart all over again.
yes. I
So we're
know, I always so Aaliyah's blanket has been on my bed, and it travels with me, it's, like, traveled all around the world now.
oh,
Um, but yeah, I'm always like, "Oh my gosh, should I not be doing this?" Because I don't.
oh,
I also don't know how to not bring it with me or not have
I
it, on
know.
the pillow. It's
What's
like
your comfort?
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, there are some things, no, for sure that I just like you, that I have
Yeah,
backed up because I don't want anything to happen to them, and
right.
have some really beautiful things out that people sent after
Yeah.
that I do keep out. Because Leah is cremated, so
Yes.
I have
Yeah.
the urn in there. So it's really like, it's a
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful setup. But no, I totally
Oh,
feel you with the what do I put out? What do I not? Because I don't want
yeah. Yeah.
anything.
Same with the urn, right? Oh my gosh, I agree. We have Brooke cremated too,
Okay,
um,
so
and we
yeah.
have her little like she's in angel wings, and then underneath
Mhm.
it says to eternity and beyond. And
Yes.
then we have her
Oh,
little picture frame in the front, and like I love it. Like, it's the one thing that we do have out and keep out, and
yeah.
because we want her to be out and about, and it's
Yeah.
true, Liz. But it was interesting that you said that because I really struggled with, and I know I like had complicated grief and things,
Of
hard
course.
time moving forward. And so I had a cuddle cub that weighed the same amount as Brooke did, and I would carry it everywhere with me. And I did that for probably 4 or 5 months. And
Yeah.
see, the thing that I had to recognize is like the bear wasn't growing. So I was like still stuck on the day that Brooke passed and
Yeah.
realizing that I wasn't like, and in our household too, um, I was like holding on to dead flowers from her funeral service. And like I had a hard time
Mm.
releasing any of that or like letting go of how our house looked when Brooke was alive
Yeah.
and realizing that. So we actually brought in a puppy then, which forced me to put the cuddle cup away because the puppy tried one time, and I was like correlating the cuddle cup then with Brooke so much, which
Yeah.
you can't explain it. Like my arm, your arms ache after you lose your baby. And like, so I just like carrying something just felt so natural.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, then I was forced to put that away, and I'm grateful I did because nothing happened to the cuddle cub. It's still safe, and it does remind me of her, because it does weigh the same as she does, or
Yeah.
did. But yeah, I think it's just hard to navigate in the beginning and knowing what is going to work and what doesn't. And I think you're right.
Yeah, and when you just mentioned the flowers, I feel like this is a little pro tip. So same way. I mean, I had a lot of flowers in this house after, and all I kept thinking was, "Oh, these are all gonna die just like Aaliyah," which is crazy, but
Oh,
that
I
was the only
know.
thing I
Right.
kept thinking. And so in the backyard, I have a spot because I still get flowers, Mother's Day flowers, or,
Yeah.
on
Oh,
December 1st, Aaliyah's, anniversary day, people send flowers. And, I try to say maybe no flowers because, they do eventually die. But for anyone that does send flowers, they're always beautiful. And I have a place in the backyard that I have put all of them since December
oh,
1st,
that's beautiful.
2020, so that I'm not throwing them in the trash, or, they're still here in her home. They're just,
Yeah.
outside. And now there's a ton of them that have been there. And so it's just a little
Oh,
area in the backyard.
it's
But that
almost
is
like
a good idea.
composting 'em. Yeah.
No, it can be tough for people to let go of those things. And
Yes.
people that don't understand this, they're like, they're just flowers. It's no big deal. But
Exactly.
that is not how it is to us. And
No.
so I always tell people maybe just avoid flowers, or if you don't, then a plant, perhaps.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and if you do have a lot of flowers, after something like this, try to find a place, either around your house or maybe in a park that you would walk in, or, love, to just kind of put them. And I don't want to say it's a memorial, but in a way it kind of is.
Yeah.
So yeah, for anyone feeling like that about flowers, because I totally feel you on that one.
Yes. And I
Those
love that you have a space for them. Like, it's almost like composting them. I love
Yeah,
that like you're
yeah,
repurposing them and they can become almost, part of the earth, and they're back there in that area. And it's
yeah,
interesting you say that too, Liz, because then it also sparked up, I didn't know what to do with some of my breast milk. So lavender plants and a couple other types of plants actually thrive with breast milk or milk.
really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I actually was able to,
Oh,
use some of it on lavender plants, and that was so beautiful.
oh
But
my
you're
gosh.
right, I think it's just being aware that they can pass, and then, and not like I had to change that mindset too of not correlating the
It's
things
hard.
as Brooke, but it is so hard, and it takes practice, and like it takes
Yep.
time, and like talking to others who get it. And it's not just like saying it to someone who doesn't, and they're like, well, that's not Brooke, duh. Like they're flowers. And it's like, whoa, whoa. Here we are. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And really, I feel like with the flowers and things, it's like, yes, you're giving them to me, but really they're for Aaliyah, right?
Yeah.
They're for Brooke. They're for your
Yeah.
baby. And so, yeah, to have to part with that is like, oh, I can't do that. So, yeah,
Right.
those are
Right.
just some little suggestions, because I know that
Right,
feeling.
and it is. And it's all about like this episode is like protecting your peace and making sure you're doing what is needed for yourself, being
Yeah.
on this journey, your own grief and trauma journey, and what that looks like for you, and no one
Yeah.
else taking that or minimizing that, or, making you feel any certain way about it because it's yours.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh,
Exactly.
well, thank you, Liz. I can't thank you enough for being on here, for
Thanks.
sharing openly and honestly for all of our listeners. You're just amazing.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I'm always here if anyone is looking for support. And of course, I hope everyone listening knows that the Chasing the Rainbows groups are incredible and are there for you. So please utilize them, because it's
Oh,
truly
thank
amazing what you've done.
Oh, you too, Liz. And I just, appreciate your partnership and, us being along this journey together, because it does take a community and all
It
of us
does.
uniting.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thanks, Liz, and,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much. Yes, listeners, and please, tune into our next, episode and follow and subscribe so we can reach as many baby loss survivors in their time of need as possible, and we're always with you, fertility loss, pregnancy loss, and infant loss survivors. Until next time. Thanks again, Liz.
Thanks.